Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the Talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. We're still at Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference talking to some of the attendees and some friends. And here's a friend and an attendee, Mr. Oliver Breidenbach of Boinx Software. Oliver, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we talked.
It is. Let's see, because I don't think you and I got to get on camera at Macworld this year.
No, we somehow missed it. Yeah.
Well, you were busy and I was busy.
You talked to Florian, maybe.
I talked to Florian, and he showed us iStop Motion. And,
great stuff.
The problem was getting to the booth to talk to him. It was packed.
Yes. So fond memories.
of 6 months ago.
Yes. Time flies.
So you've made it back across the pond again, this time for WWDC.
Yes, and a lot of other events down the road. So I'm going to stick around for a while.
Good. Well, we have to start out by asking, from a developer's perspective, what are your thoughts on the keynote announcements? We know you can't talk about all the sessions, but on the keynote announcements.
Lots of interesting stuff. Apple lit a fireworks of announcements, I think, and pretty interesting, pretty impressive lineup of new stuff. Of course, the highlight is the MacBook Pro with the Retina display, but I also like what they did in iOS 6 with iCloud and the advances they've been doing there, it's shaping up to be a good story, and we're working this week, of course, with the engineers at the Worldwide Developers Conference, going to the Apple Labs. Figuring out this stuff and figuring out the best way to use it and leverage it in our own applications.
Oliver, with all the discussions that have been having over things moving to the iOS side, it felt like with this new MacBook Pro that the Mac has not been forgotten by any means. Certainly with Mountain Lion and some of the upgrades, it feels like that platform is rolling along very, very well, very strongly. And the iOS platform is a parallel platform, not superior, not inferior, just different and complementary.
Well, I still think that the iOS side is more the future than the Mac side. But certainly it's not yet. No, and the fact that Apple again manages to come out with a new product that is really game-changing in some aspects. This machine is a pro laptop, and it's light, it's small, it's thin. The gorgeous display. This is really a step into the future, right? So this is really redefining what a laptop is. They had the MacBook Air before, but that was not a machine targeted at creative professionals, right? You couldn't do a lot. You could do a little bit of video editing, but it's certainly video editing on the MacBook Air is certainly not what you want to do every day. And now with this MacBook Pro, man, we can put Boinx TV on this, and you have a TV studio, put Final Cut on it, and you have an editing system that is really great, and all the other creative stuff you can do with it. Where an iPad is maybe the future once the iPad has enough power to compete and with desktop machines. So this is really an in between the Mac Pro and the iPad, sort of like So for a while we will see great new stuff coming from Apple in the Mac world, and that's good. And certainly as a Mac software developer, I'm excited about that.
You mentioned the Mac Pro, which got a silent, quiet refresh that is not impressing, it seems, anyone. Unfortunately, no.
That's why it was quiet, maybe.
Yeah. No USB 3, no Thunderbolt. It sort of seems to signal, and I guess I'm as bad as anyone else making a judgment call here, but it almost seems to signal the end of it. That if you really have a need for this to keep going on a legacy path, you have it, and it's faster, and that's pretty much it. On the other hand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but can you not add USB 3 to a Mac Pro?
Well, you could
with
with a
cards?
PCIe card.
Yeah.
I'm certain you can. So I think the Mac Pro serves a very right now. The Mac Pro increasingly serves a very, very narrow kind of person, because the portables and the iMacs have become so powerful that many people see them as a very good alternative to a desktop machine. So actually, the new MacBook Pro has become the new has become the desktop machine. There's no reason for having the big clunky box under your table anymore if you can have a machine like the MacBook the new MacBook Pro. So yeah, I think that they keep around the Mac Pro for a very specific sort of audience, and I think that's a shrinking audience because many people see or do have a good alternative with an iMac or the new MacBook Pro. So I'm not surprised. I'm actually surprised that they actually did do a refresh. I was thinking that they would just quietly let it run out in a year or so. So the refresh is sort of like the signal to those specific kind of customers saying we know we haven't forgotten entirely about you. Don't expect us to reinvent the desktop machine anytime, and maybe prepare for alternatives, and that's how I read it. I mean, I might be totally wrong about it, but if you look at how powerful the MacBook Pro, the new MacBook Pro is compared to the desktop machines, there's no contest, So and even the iMac, the 27-inch iMac that they're already selling, is if you do video editing, it's so fast that there's no real advantage of having a big box under the table.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I think of some of the professionals, sure, and I know we're going to get emails. That's fine. But that audience is so narrow, and it can be better served, or at least served, arguably better, by a device, a machine like the new MacBook Pro. Sorry, with Retina. Let's do it right.
Awesome, yes. A new MacBook Pro.
and I think back to the time when Apple stopped doing the G4 and G5 towers that we were all, at your level and what I was doing then, I would never buy an iMac. I needed the tower.
Yes.
I needed the slots. I needed that. And eventually the iMacs became so powerful that I looked at them, and now I would never look back because there's nothing I really need. And I wonder if we're not in that same transition.
Yes,
for the Pro,
absolutely.
the Pro people.
Absolutely. I mean, there's one piece missing from the puzzle, but you see products coming up with Thunderbolt, and they sort of even make the need for a Mac Pro even smaller. Yeah. So if you absolutely do have to have a PCIe card, you can get an extension box that allows you to plug in the PCIe card, and even there are extension boxes that fit 5 PCIe cards. So I think Apple is not abandoning anybody. They just switching their focus to areas where they can be really innovative. And I don't see anything that you can be innovative about in a desktop box. So except for what Apple has been doing in the past, anyways, which was making them so nicely engineered that it was very easy to configure them and very easy to plug in hard drives and stuff like that. But if you have an interface like Thunderbolt, the need for that decreases. And they showed off a nice. They didn't show it, but they showed a slide with a nice SSD-based RAID. You can't imagine how fast this thing will be. And I think clearly the days where you want to have 4 or 5 clunky hard drives in your machine are maybe even gone, right? So everything is going SSD. Clearly, I mean, it's the prices come down for the SSDs just enough to make it a really interesting alternative. Not for to store like terabytes of data, but for storing the files as long as you edit them and stuff like that. And then you would have to copy them over to some archiving system. But this thing is so fast that you can store huge amounts. I mean, video editing, with a terabyte of SSD RAID, that's going to be, come on. It's like,
it boggles the mind a little bit.
A little bit, yes.
And I think you're right. We all forget that with the Thunderbolt ports, and 2 now in the new MacBook Pro, that can just as easily plug in that chassis you were talking about, the card chassis. You can plug that in just as easily as you could to a desktop machine.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you use the portability, and why wouldn't you keep that gorgeous Retina display?
Yeah, sure.
So
that's the.
So the truck may not be dead; it just may have been remodeled.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think the. I mean the need for a truck has decreased due to the options that are available on the other things, and I mean if you don't have to make a choice anymore between. I used to have a desktop and a laptop machine, because the desktop machine was used for the heavy lifting, and I wanted to be mobile at the same time. Mm-hmm. But it was always a pain to keep them in sync, right? You never had the data on the same kind of thing, and so now with this MacBook Pro, I really don't see a need anymore for having 2 machines, right? One for video editing and one for your emails that you want to take with you. And it's really, I love my MacBook Air because it's so small and light, and it's really a lot smaller and lighter than the MacBook Pro used to be. But this new MacBook Pro, there's like it's just light enough and small enough that you're like, okay, this it might be, I might be getting rid of my MacBook Air and going for one of those machines, instead.
It does feel, as someone coming from a 17-inch MacBook Pro, this one feels like a lot less of a compromise than an Air.
Yes.
Because I've never been able to quite get the whole way down to an Air for a lot of reasons that we won't get into here. But the 15-inch with that resolution, I can live with. I need to get in front of it to know for sure, but I'll adapt. Yes. But the speed and the Retina display.
They are showing some off at the World Wide Web conference, and it's like you sit in front of it and you start browsing the internet, and after about a minute or so, you can't imagine that you had ever not a Retina display, right? It's like it's so easy. I mean, it's really much easier on the eye to read, and to work with this machine. So even if you do just text, text editing, it's like you would be editing on a printed page, right? So it's totally crisp and clear. And it's just fantastic. I mean, it's if you see it, you're asking yourself, why didn't we have that, always,
It's funny you say that, because we talked to so many authors when the iPad with Retina came out, when the iPhone with Retina came out, and they all said the same thing. And of course, they are the printed word kind of people. And I was always surprised. I thought they'd be talking about all the graphics and all the color depth and all that. And it was like, no, the text is gorgeous. Yeah. And here you are. You're also
the same thing,
a graphics person, and you're talking about the text.
Yes. Yeah, because the thing is, of course, if you have like a photograph of a landscape, it now looks much more vibrant, and the colors are much better and stuff like that. But your eye didn't really, you can't really see the difference if you go 3 meters from it, and you can't, you can see this one is a little bit, it's crispier and stuff like that. But with text, there's a difference like night and day. It's really a totally different experience. It's like before you think you have new glasses.
So are you getting a commission for selling these? Is this
no.
Is this the deal?
I wish. I wish Apple would give me a couple of billions of their.
Well, which one of us doesn't? Oliver, let's wrap up. Ask you your impression of the iOS 6 announcements and what we're going to see coming for the iOS devices. There seem to be a lot of interesting things there from a user standpoint. How about from a developer standpoint?
Well, I didn't dig that deep into the developer stuff yet, so I can't really say. There seem to be some things in there that my engineers have wished for. So they said this is great that we have it now, and it will certainly help improve our apps and make our life easier, as every development, as every release does, really. Apple listens, surprisingly, listens that very much to what the developers say about the APIs, and generally you get your wishes granted. It's like sometimes, at least. From the user point of view, I think I was a little bit worried before the iOS 6 announcement, because a couple of my friends started selling their iPhones and getting Android phones, and the reason why they did that was that there's the coolness factor, and the coolness factor comes from a couple of this is cool features, right? So I'm seeing in iOS 6, Apple really looked at those features on the other platforms and brought them to iOS 6, and that's kind of promising. They are not living in their own little world and don't know what's going on outside. So they're paying attention to this kind of thing, and that's reassuring to someone who has no Android apps on the market and makes all the money from selling iOS apps and Mac apps, is to see that Apple makes sure that they keep their edge, and they in some respects they are innovating, in others they are catching up with the competition, but they stay on top of the game, and that's important, because I think there's a real risk that the tide can turn against them really quickly. I mean, they got it turned for them really quickly. I think it can turn against them in the same speed, and you have to pay attention to when your customers start thinking that other people's stuff is more cooler than your stuff is, and that they do it, and the most mind-boggling thing is the Maps thing. It's like they send the message to Google. It's like, you guys think you can do Maps? Think again. It's like, that's the impression you get when you look at the Maps thing. That is simply stunning. It's like you ask yourself why how come that Google didn't do that? It's like.
And I've seen so many comments, people challenging, that the Google Maps can do this, the new Maps feature in iOS 6 can't do that. Well, first of all, we'll wait and see what happens by the time it's released. But more importantly, some of the things that they talk about it not being able to do, not everything, but so much of it, I think Apple may have looked at it and said, okay, how often do people want to do this? And
I think the difference between Google and Apple is, and always has been, that Apple looks at the stuff from the user's point of view. So what's important to the user, and what's important to the user is that this thing is simply gorgeous, right? Mm-hmm. So aside from the fact that the icon if you drive off the bridge, you get killed, which is something I don't know how that slipped through their attention, but
that'll be fixed by the time it comes out.
Just looking at the graphics and the way they render the maps, it's more confidence inspiring that the maps are actually accurate, and that's what gives you this attention to detail in the graphics design, is that you can you get the impression that the quality of the design translates to the quality of the mapping material in your mind. So you look at this and you're much more confident that those maps are actually accurate than if you compare them with the Google Maps, and that's why I think this is so important. And the smoothness of the transition between the various views, where this is just something where you think, how come that Google never figured this out, and this is quite impressive. It's like they're getting into this local data game, right? So they start with their own database and their own maps. It's going to be interesting if they are adding curation to, you want to submit your restaurant to the maps, we do have to approve it or something like that. That's going to be interesting if they translate that. But they do it for a reason. It's not just to kick out Google. It's like, you see the what they are trying to get into is like this. If you what they showed, like if you go to the airport, this new app, the ticket app thing that they showed, it comes up with the passport you need. If you go to the movie, it figures out that you're at the movie and then shows you the ticket you need for the movie. You don't have to hunt for it. And that's like the system is like, that's what local data, I don't know what the correct English word is, but the localization data, that's what it does for you, and then that's why they go into this business. They don't go into this business to replace the Maps app. That's something they do just to stick it to the competition. Yeah. But there's actually a very a deeper reason for doing this, and that's, to see this is really eye-opening. If you're in the keynote and they show this and you see and you connect the dots and like, oh, this is interesting. Why
You're right. Why? That's the thing about Apple. They do things and immediately you understand, and your next thought is, why didn't somebody do this before? Because it's so obvious. It's so, I don't know about simple to implement, but simple to understand why this is a good idea.
Yes.
And you're right. I'm like you. The Passbook feature, it just seems so natural and logical. You're doing a lot of traveling. I traveled out here. It's great to have those.
It seems like it almost seems like a very small niche thing, and you wonder, why are they doing this app, right? But it's actually an application of the local, localized data, yeah. And that's they quickly showed like the coupon thing. So what you could imagine, I don't know if that's the way they do it, but you walk down the road and they just keep loading the coupons for the stores that you walk by, and when you walk along and you don't need it anymore, it disappears or something like that. I don't know what that would be one nice idea to implement. I don't know if they're gonna do this, but this is like the kind of imagination you need. How do you translate the engineering into something that is really usable?
Right. Yeah, that's well said. It's one thing to engineer it; it's another one to make it usable.
Yeah.
Speaking of usable, give us a quick update on what's going on at Boinx.
We spent the last couple of months vigorously marketing iStop-Motion for iPad, which has been a great success. We're very happy about how people received it, the prizes we won at Macworld and so on and so forth. But we haven't forgotten about our other apps. And so over the last couple of years, Peter has been working on FotoMagico 4, and that's about to hit the road. Should be in a month or so beginning of July maybe. We hope that it doesn't slip due to unforeseen new announcements by Apple. So of course we want the FotoMagico to support the gorgeous HIDPI display, and so there's a couple of things we need to do now that we didn't foresee. So we have some additional work that we didn't factor into the development schedule. But I think we can still make it for a beginning of July release. And so that's coming up. Interesting new stuff. It will have multiple items on one screen, so you can have multiple titles, multiple slides, multiple pictures, multiple movies on the same on the screen at the same time. It has a reworked timeline. So the FotoMagico is unique in video and photo animation software as that it has two modes of operation. One is when you are starting out with a story, you want to get, the structure of the story right, and so you drag in your images and you bring them in the correct sequence, and start to structure and tell your story. But then you have to go in and fine-tune the timing. And with the fine-tuning of the timing is a new mode that we developed where you can go in and you have a real timeline, real-time timeline. So you can say, okay, this is the exact time that my transition needs to start, and this is the exact time where the title should come in, and you can time it quite nicely to music and that kind of stuff. And that are the major two things. And there are a couple of other additions as well, but those are the big two things.
Right.
And we've been also working on iStop Motion, a new version for the Mac, which now has already, so it's already almost finished with the high resolution display support. So it looks stunning. We have the iStop Motion remote camera for the iPad, so that you can use an iPhone as a remote camera for the iPad, iStop Motion for iPad version, and we want to bring that into iStop Motion 3, but I don't know if we can make if we do it in time. So it's kind of like we might be able to do it, and we want to ship that very soon, because now we have like the opportunity to be one of the first apps supporting the high-res display, and we sort of want to take that. So it's an ambitious project. Let's see if the engineers can pull it off, and the marketing is also a lot of work. But mostly the engineers do have to do a lot of work to get it done, and so that's the two big things coming up right immediately.
Well, if you're not on the road, come back and tell us about them. If you are, we'll get one of the other team members to show up and give us a walkthrough when it's all ready.
As I'm going to be in the United States, it's going to be easier for us to Skype, because then we don't have to do it either your middle of the night or my middle of the night.
Yeah, that does
so
help.
It's like that helps. Yeah. So let's chat again closer to the release, or maybe around the release of FotoMagico 4.
That sounds good.
Yes.
Well, thank you for the time. We know that it's a busy time, and we appreciate it. It's always fun.
I'm here for you all the. That's the only reason I come here is to talk to you.
Yeah. Oliver will be selling cars outside next. The website for people that want to check out your stuff.
Boinx.com, Boinx.com.
Great. Folks, that's Oliver Breidenbach of Boinx. I will have links in the show notes to his products and to everything, and we hope you will be joining us again for more from Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference. I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. MacVoicesTV is part of the MacVoices Group and a member of Mac Level 10.